Good morning or afternoon or evening whenever you find this video. Just want to do a talk. I think I want to title this one, "We Need to Find a Cure for Arthritis." Not arthritis, arthritis. Because we have some issues in our community that we don't want to address. And arthritis, you know most of your old folks talk to you about arthritis. And you go to the doctors and get all these pharmaceutical drugs to cure it, and there are actually a lot of natural cures that can do the same thing that these artificial ones do, that you pay all these dollars for each and every month. But arthritis, the definition of arthritis is it's an inflammation, situation of inflammation and serious pain which many people of all ages and backgrounds actually suffer from. Matter of fact, I just talked to someone on yesterday, asked them how they were doing, and said that arthritis is getting them. Now granted, this person is 91 years old, be 92 in about 3 months, but arthritis is a situation of integration and serious pain that only black people deal with. And we ain't figured it out yet. And if we go across the spectrum of the American society, we'll actually see some things that pose quite a few challenges, I should say. We keep complaining of white supremacy, but we actually continue to do everything in our power to be around white America and to do the things that they do. And in Proverbs 3, verse 31, it says, "Don't envy your oppressor and don't choose his ways." We want to live where they live. We want to work where they work. We want to eat what they eat. And I believe over in, speaking of eating what they eat, I think it says, I believe in Leviticus, it says, "Don't eat meat with blood in it." And go out to a restaurant and I hear us ordering meat the same way they order. We want it medium well or rare, or we don't want. We hardly eat our meat well done anymore because they did that. Now I still eat my meat well done. Don't bring me nothing with no blood in it. But we want to eat what they eat, and the Bible says don't eat meat that has blood in it. Now, I ain't calling nobody animals, but every animal show I've ever watched that actually eat meat, they always eat meat bloody. So when they chasing their prey. So you take that how you want to. Now, we want to attend the events they attend. We want to send our children to the same schools they send their kids to. Now, history has actually shown since the civil rights victory, if you want to call it that, we have not built anything good or useful for the black communities around the country. As a matter of fact, in 1977, this is of course a little bit over a decade after the Civil Rights Bill was signed. In 1977, only 35% of black college graduates were actually graduating from HBCUs. So that means 65% of blacks are not graduating from HBCUs because they're going to white schools. Now, I'm not putting white schools down, I'm making a point. In 2014, they did this study again. Only 14% of black college graduates are graduating from HBCUs, which means 86% of black college graduates are not graduating from HBCUs. And then we had a nerve to talk about they won't teach us our history. Well, what you expect? You going to their schools. You ain't going to your schools to learn the history. But that's part of the problem in our community as a people. We don't want to take the time. We don't want to take the energy and effort to build anything worthwhile as a people. We want to assimilate into something that's already built. And that's something Marcus Garvey said back in the early 20th century. He said, we want to start already successful. He said, I think he used Sears and Roebuck as an example. He said, those folks had to start from the bottom and work their way up. He said, and we're going to have to do the same thing. Marcus Garvey said, we have no banks of our own, no big stores, no commercial undertakings, and we depend on others as dealers while we remain consumers. And Marcus Garvey's been dead almost 100 years. And they say we have over $1 trillion running through the hands of black people every year, and only 2.1% of that $1 trillion remains in black hands. We got a problem, folks. The Negro has always desired to start from the top, hence he comes down. No success ever came from the top. It is always from the bottom up. He will never be an industrial or commercial factor until he has learned the principles of commercial and industrial success. And these principles are as much open to him as to anybody else. Now, those are still Marcus Garvey's words. Now, we need to understand that city and urban planning committees have long-term plans decades before the actual work ever begins. So while we keep running behind other folks, their folks know well in advance what the plans are for our communities. Now ask yourself, did Marcus Garvey lie on us, about us? Having lived my entire life in the Houston, Texas area, I've seen a lot of things. One of the things that has troubled me for years is our lack of attention when it comes to the hood. Years ago, I was a manager for one of the national office supply chains, still around today. When a project was launched to tear down some apartment complex on Allen Parkway near Freedmanstown, and study your history, your black history, and understand what Freedmanstown was about in the Houston area. There are others around the country, but study the one in the Houston area. Now this area was just seconds away from downtown Houston. The public was told that the old units would be torn down because they had been neglected over the years, and that's a whole nother issue. But they had been neglected over the years, and new units would actually be built for the residents, and a lot of black people thought this was noble. Seeing that there was actually a resurgence of what was happening in downtown Houston, I knew there was no way the current residents would be able to move back once the project was completed. You had to be blind to not even see that wasn't the plan anyway. Those residents were going to be priced out, which is what happened. And not long after, the attack was on the 4th Ward residents, was right up the street from the Allen Parkway apartments. And 2- and 3-story high-rises littered that area, which was once an eyesore for Houston's upper crust. Because if you ever been to Houston and you traveled in that area, because the office store that I was a manager at was actually sitting right in between 4th Ward and River Oaks. Now River Oaks is what is old white money in the Houston area. I'm not sure, they might let us in now, but years ago they wouldn't even let black people in the area. You couldn't even drive through the area years ago. You can drive through that now, but I'm not certain if they'll actually let you buy property there. But you had this shopping area that kind of separated 4th Ward from River Oaks, almost like a 2-block area that separated the two. So they're right next door to each other. And so 4th Ward was actually an eyesore for our upper crust. Now, these areas, Allen Parkway and 4th Ward, you wouldn't catch a white person in those areas after dark unless they was buying some crack or cocaine. And, a lot of them did that too. They had to do it under the cover of darkness so that friends and coworkers couldn't see them. And, they wouldn't shop at our old location where our office supply store was, because that store was situated right in the middle of the top area in Houston for homosexuals. Now, I'm not making this stuff up. That's where our store was. Right across the street from where our old store was, there was actually a gay club called Mary's. And You know, so the upper crust didn't want to shop there either. So we moved the store closer to River Oaks, you know, on one side, sitting in between the middle of River Oaks and 4th Ward. So you get my drift. So those 2 and 3-story high rises actually went up $250, $350, $400,000. And I recently went to the area to attend a farmers market event, and there are only a few of the homes, the older homes, that are still there. And the area is now called Midtown. Along the street that leads into the community from downtown Houston is now littered with shops and restaurants, you know, for people to engage in outdoor festivities. And now the 3rd and 5th Ward areas, well, not now, but I mean, they still have some interest, but once they moved from the 4th Ward area, they went toward 3rd and 5th Ward. And if one were to drive through certain parts of these neighborhoods now, they would also be able to see the changes that have taken place. There are high-rises that have been built in these areas that were once considered eyesores as well. And now the new interest has become the South Park and Sunnyside area. And right now the toll road is under construction that runs down the middle of 288, which is South Houston. You know, direct south, straight. It's a straight shot from downtown. And new homes have built near the community college campus. They have a $200,000 plus price tag on them. And practically everybody that lives in those residences work for our medical center. And if you, like I said, if you know anything about the geography of Houston, you will see that 288 gives you direct access to everything. If you come down 288 from 288 south, you're going to pass NRG Stadium, which is where the Houston Texans play. The Astrodome is there, and they're talking about still doing some stuff, tearing it down or whatever. Once you pass NRG Stadium, you have the medical center. You pass the medical center a few more miles, you get to downtown Houston. And of course in downtown Houston, like I said, there's a resurgent high-rises down there. Restaurants, many new restaurants down there. You have Toyota Center, which is where the Rockets play. You have Minute Maid Park, which is where the Astros play. You have the soccer stadium. I can't even think of the name of the soccer team. And you also, in a sense, have access to the University of Houston and Texas Southern and University of Houston across the street from each other, but nobody's really trying to get to Texas Southern. They're trying to gain access to the University of Houston. You have the central campus to the right of 288. You have the downtown campus to the left of 288. So that's where the resurgence is. That's what people want. They want access to all of this stuff. And even the homes that are in the established neighborhoods along 288 where they're buying up old properties and building, the starting price tag is $185,000 for a house that may be 1,200 square feet. You know, I did some work at the University of Houston about a year ago. And as I left the campus each day, I took different routes because I wanted to see what had taken place. And there are a lot of improvements around that area. And I was actually told that there had been talks about attempting to buy the predominantly black high school that sits directly across the street from U of H. Well, the predominantly black high school and the predominantly black Texas Southern both sit across the street from University of Houston. And talks have been in the works for years about U of H buying Texas Southern. Now, years ago, these neighborhoods were actually inhabited by whites who would later move under the phrase that we term white flight. And once whites started to move out slowly, they also removed their children from these schools because they don't want their children to attend those schools with blacks. And that was actually a law on the books at the time that says you could not legally send your children to another school if they were zoned to another one based on their address. This law actually also stated your children could not ride a school bus to another school by passing the front of another school. This is the reason that many of your predominantly black schools have addresses on the side, from the side streets. It actually allowed white kids to ride in front of the school with no repercussions from the law because the address would show the front of the school with a side street address. And because of this, white kids could legally pass in front of the black school at will, because the front of the school was considered the side of the school, according to the law and addressing. Now, I've mentioned the term white flight, which means that once one too many blacks move in a neighborhood, the white exodus begins. And a few years after the white exodus, the black exodus starts. The first leg of the flight on the south side of Houston would be the Missouri City, which is a suburb of Houston. And as blacks started to actually follow whites there, the whites would move over to Stafford, which is another suburb, although smaller. As blacks move to Stafford, whites move to Sugar Land, which has grown by leaps and bounds now. As blacks followed again, whites moved out to Greatwood, and then they moved to Richmond, and then they moved to Rosenberg. And this also happened on the north side of town. And when whites moved further out to areas like Humboldt, Kingwood, the Woodland, and Cypress, blacks had to follow once again. We went through a period of extremely high gas prices. It was now that the strain was started to be felt by all of those people who decided to move way out. Now, people who had bought the H2 Hummers and similar large vehicles were now leaving them parked because they could no longer afford to drive. Gas was too expensive. Although many struggled, blacks were actually the hardest hit by this distress. While we were so busy trying to be like others, they were saving some of their money in order to make a sweeping change. As whites now started to look for properties closer to the inner city, blacks were now stuck financially, in many cases having to drive the long commutes, which makes going to work and coming home more expensive. Many whites moved back into the place they ran from years ago because they now know that many blacks have actually been priced out of the very communities they once inhabited. Every time a new highway is built in the area now, it comes with a tax called a toll. Tax dollars are used to build the roads, and then we pay taxes to use the road. And then if they don't pay the taxes back from the bond money that they borrowed, then we get put on the hook for that too. Something wrong with us. Now, it's now become more expensive to get back into town if you want to minimize being caught in traffic. Notice I said minimize, because the toll roads are sometimes backed up as well as all the other routes. And my mentor went to Singapore and Malaysia and all that some years back, and he told me once he went over there and got caught in traffic, he said he'd never complain about traffic again. He said, we have no clue what traffic is over here in the States. And so, where I live is near Highway 288, and this particular highway actually offers access to everything I mentioned earlier. And who would actually like direct access to everything that entertains us, everything that takes care of us, everything that educates us, and in many cases pays us? Now, many of us, I hear it over and over again, where it makes me sick to even hear the word anymore. But many of us want to complain about gentrification.